Good morning, everyone. So what happens when your struggle session turns and your show trial turns into the red pill the masses take to be like, wow, it looks like you're just making things up. Systemic racism. Hey? Okay, hold on. I'm about to traumatize you guys. Trigger warning, okay? Here's some systemic racism in action. Here we go. Oh, she did it! She did it. Unbelievable. Systemic racism, according to Commissioner Lucki. Here we go.
Obstacle course. In there, there's a 6-foot mat that you have to do a broad jump. And when we put the lens on it and reviewed that physical requirements test, evidence told us that the average person can broad jump their height. So, of course, how many 6-foot people do we hire? And there are people in all different cultures that may not be 6 feet, including there's not a lot of women that are 6 feet tall that would not be able to get through that type of test.
So that would be systemic discrimination, but I'm trying to think of systemic racism.
In our we have some questions, for example, in our aptitude test. And you know what, I might refer Gail, because that is Gail's specialty in the HR world.
You know who is going to answer this question? Gail, come on out here and tell us how there's systemic racism in the RCMP, because me, the commissioner of the RCMP, who last week spent the week telling the press, I'm not really sure on this whole definition of systemic racism. I think that the policing world has a different lens. I think, blah, 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 blah. Now is definitely sure that there's systemic racism, and you're watching it right now. Oh my goodness. Can she jump her height? Can she jump 6 feet? Oh, good. That was a good jump. So I don't know that that's systemic racism. And I didn't show the question because it was in the middle as well. I wanted to show the Gale part. I thought that was more funny. But I don't think, one, if you've got a mea culpa, right? And you've got to say, okay, yeah, there's definitely systemic racism. For sure it's systemic racism. You should maybe have a couple of examples to go to in the well. You should maybe be batted around the office a little bit. What's systemically racist about the RCMP? The hats? No, it's not the hats. I mean, the hats are a little, well, okay. Next, can we keep going. The red, maybe, no, it's a little communist, right? No, okay, that's British ancestry? You don't say. Okay, moving on. What else could be racist about the RCMP systemically, right? You should have something. Especially because you know that you're going to be paraded around talking about this. So I think that it's really funny that she throws Gail under the bus at the end of the whole thing. And where was Gail in the first week, if that's her HR specialty? Did they bring Gail on this week? Hey, Gail, so you're the racism expert? Wonderful. Where's systemic racism in the RCMP? We'd love to hear it. Go. So I didn't see Gail's response, but the whole thing is absurd. It is absurd. It's absurd. And the reason it's absurd is because systemic racism is not something that Canadians were concerned about until May of 2020. Black Lives Matter, the stuff that's happening down in the United States, unbelievably, this is mostly about Donald Trump and the 2020 election. I really don't believe that there's this push worldwide because George Floyd died. I do not believe it. It is manufactured. And the reason I think also it's manufactured is because in every country, different examples or different excuses were given until they were just like, oh, forget giving different examples. We're doing this for George Floyd, right? Like in the beginning, that France was protesting for something that happened like 6 years ago. Toronto had the woman, or the woman who accused cops of throwing her off the balcony, the mother who accused cops of throwing the woman off the balcony, right? Everybody was like, oh, justice for, I can't remember her name, Rhea, it doesn't matter at this point. Immaterial to the story. It does matter, of course, I don't want her to die, that was terrible, but moving on. Fundamentally, it is absolutely absurd. It's just crazy that this is where we are in 2020, right? And here's, moving into the real news, because there's bigger news. There's bigger news than this, right? There's bigger news than the commissioner of the RCMP making a fool of herself again about racism again. Because what happened in Nova Scotia? Right? There are questions that the RCMP should be able to answer, and what they're doing is saying this is racist. How dare we? How dare we ask women to jump 6 feet? That's racist. Well, it's not actually. It's systemic. Do you have any examples of systemic racism? Gail does. Come on, Gail. Okay, moving into the real news. Sorry about that. Here we go. Over a month ago, Mr. Poilievre says, I asked Mr. Morneau 3 times if Canada would be downgraded. I'll just show you one, because Mr. Morneau is... It's like watching Will Ferrell do a sketch of a finance minister who's got money in the Bahamas in the Paradise Papers, you know? Right? Like, it's just like watching that, except that's exactly what we're watching. Here we go.
Is it possible, Minister, that Canada will lose its AAA debt rating this year? Yes or no?
Sorry, excuse me, am I unmuted? Yes.
Okay.
The economic challenge, obviously, that we're facing is significant, and the investments that we are making are significant. We believe that those are in the best interest of the economy and will keep our economy strong.
So is it possible that we'll lose our AAA rating?
Well, as I said, we're making significant investments to support the strength of our economy. The ratings agency look at the strength of the economy. We believe that making those investments will support a strong economy as we come out of this.
And typical Liberal, he just doesn't answer the question. He doesn't need to answer the question, does he? No, silly Pierre Poilievre, right? Except here's his statement 19 hours ago. Today is the 25th of June. My statement on Fitch's recent rating decision, and he doesn't actually address the fact that Fitch downgraded Canada. Anyway, we lost our AAA rating. This is what the finance minister said. He said, going into the global pandemic, Canada was in a great position to deploy our fiscal firepower to protect Canadians, and we have. A worst case scenario for Canadians and the economy would have been to not act. Canada's COVID-19 response is ensuring workers and businesses have the financial support they need to weather this crisis and come back strong. Canada continues to be in a stronger financial position than many other countries in the G7 and G20. Global markets continue to invest in Canadian bonds, driving up our cost of borrowing to historic lows. Moving forward, we will continue to be fiscally responsible while acting to protect our country and its economy. So he doesn't say in the tweet or in the thing like we've been downgraded. So to make it really, really clear, here's BNN Bloomberg. Canada loses AAA rating, Fitch downgrades amid virus costs. And it's interesting. Everybody in BNN Bloomberg seems to think this isn't a big deal. Just like everybody seemed to think deficit spending, not a big deal, unless Stephen Harper's doing it, right? Stephen Harper had a surplus of $1 billion. Justin Trudeau had a surplus of $1 billion in 2015. Now we're at $300 billion odd in debt. Okay? That's big. The GST came in for a fraction of that. Okay? Understand this. It's very expensive to live in Canada. Very, very, very expensive. Back to this. Canada has been stripped of its AAA credit rating by Fitch Ratings Incorporated, which took the country down to AA plus rating, which with a stable outlook Wednesday. Fitch said it expects the government's COVID-19 response measures to raise Canada's debt to 115.1% of GDP in 2020, up from 88.3% in 2019. However, the credit ratings agency says it sees Canada's debt to GDP stabilizing over the medium term. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. Canada's parliamentary budget officer was not overly concerned by Fitch's downgrade. Quote, the news today that one rating agency is downgrading us with a stable outlook, it's not that big of a deal in my opinion, and not something that comes up as a big surprise, Yves Giroux told BNN Bloomberg in a television interview. However, if Moody's and Standard & Poor's followed suit, Giroux acknowledged that it would raise alarm bells. If it's one thing to have one downgrade, but if all the agencies downgrade us and leave the other G7 countries at the same rating as they currently are, that would send a strange signal to markets that Canada is riskier relative to other countries or has not managed its spending as well as other countries who have equally been affected by COVID-19. It's definitely a shot across the bow for the federal government. Former parliamentary budget officer Kevin Page told BNN Bloomberg on Wednesday the AAA rating was something the federal government highlighted in their 2019 electoral platform, election platform. So isn't that interesting? Oh, we're spending our money so well, and then, I mean, COVID-19 is very expensive, but the initiatives and the spending has been irresponsible because of the amount of money sent outside of Canada to support other places. The WHO, we're basically replacing the American investment on borrowed dollars. Like America said, we're not sending $450 million this year. And so Canada sent $850 million borrowed from the future generations of Canada. You're welcome, WHO. Well spent money? Yay? No, right? Awful. Moving on. Oh, wait, no, there's more. There's just a little bit more. Quote, and so the government, scrolling down, If Canada will still have a AAA rating by other agencies, I think that only one or two G7 countries that can say that. And there is plenty of access to capital. And the cost of capital relative to other countries and relative to history is very, very low. So borrowing is cheap. And they kind of go, whatever, doesn't really matter. It's fine. Okay, moving on. The two Michaels, there was a big letter signed basically pushing Ottawa to release Meng Wanzhou, and hope that we get the two Michaels back in exchange. And this is basically, they're pushing, the letter's pushing for the Justice Minister to unilaterally intervene in the BC court case and declare it over, and then they can just ignore the extradition and send Meng to China. Like, it's interesting, but I think that they're very short-sighted. So here's the pro side. Breaking: 19 prominent political voices have signed their name to a letter delivered to the Prime Minister yesterday, asking him to consider ending Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou's extradition in order to bring Michael Korvig and Michael Spavor home. And there's no guarantees of this. They're just speculating that it might do that if they send Meng Wanzhou home, that it'll be reciprocated by sending the two Michaels home. I just don't think so. I just don't think so. Anyway, here's the other side. This horrible open letter is a powerful monument to everything that's awful about the Canadian establishment. As much as it's dressed up as being about the Michaels, the elite signatories clearly just consider China a more important ally than America. And so here's the CBC article about it. This was posted on the 24th. Today is the 25th. In a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dated June 23rd, the signatories say that Canada has the legal right to intervene to free Meng and end the extradition trial that could send her to the U.S. They cite a legal opinion published earlier this week by Toronto-based lawyer Brian Greenspan. It's interesting how just like you've got this really troublesome problem and you've got no historical legal precedent to lean on to say we should do this or do this or do this. And then all of a sudden you get some, opinion pieces written. And just let's visit a little while ago, February 28th, 2019. Here's an opinion piece remembering Jody Wilson-Raybould's words that Katie Telford said. They would write op-eds saying that what she's doing is proper, right? What the Wilson-Raybould testimony reveals about the politics of newspaper opinion pieces. So isn't it interesting? Do you think that they're above using a lawyer to do the same? Do you think that they are? Because I don't think that they are. I think that they would do that in a heartbeat if it meant justifying a move, right? What about the DPA, right? Everybody in Canada was against the DPA until they got a DPA by another name, SNC Lavalin. They're cleaning up the Alberta oil sands now, right? And they got a whole bunch of other contracts just recently as well. Aren't they lucky? Right? Isn't it just wonderful how things can work out when you're just patient and you rename things and wait to release things on days where Canadians just aren't paying attention? Back to the article. The 19 signatories say that releasing Meng could also free Michael Korvig and Michael Spavor, the two Canadians who were detained in China shortly after Meng's arrest. It could happen. Sure. China seems benevolent and kind, right? The signatories say Korvig and Spavor are being held in conditions, quote, tantamount to torture, and Meng's years-long extradition process could spell trouble for the Canadians as delays will, quote, add immeasurably to the stress that they are under. The two Michaels were taken in direct retaliation for the arrest in Canada of Meng Wanzhou. We believe that the two Michaels will remain in their Chinese prisons until Meng is free to return to China, the letter says. Right? I scroll down back to this. The signatories say Lametti should set aside concerns about the rule of law, specifically Canada's obligations under its extradition agreement with the U.S., and politically intervene to end the BC court proceedings that involve Meng. Quote, we contend that the time is past due for the minister to do just that, to end the Meng extradition proceedings and to bring the two Michaels home. I think it's probably, it's taking... Well, it's not looking at the whole situation, really. There's no guarantees that doing that would free the two Michaels anyway, and doing that would be politically terrible. Trump will retaliate. Like, he's not above that, and not that he's not above that, but like, if you punch him, he punches back twice as hard, twice. So and we saw that when Justin. During the 28 G7 made the announcement and was very bold in his rhetoric, and Trump responded on Twitter, and then we lost in the USMCA, right? And I mean, like that was years in the making and cost Canada a lot of money, and a lot of opportunity. I mean, just the summer was with the aluminium with the steel and the aluminum tariffs, right? Like that shut down a lot of Canadian businesses. That's the kind of pain that Trump punches back with, right? And what are you going to do, right? Like when the leadership is making the decisions like this, like, and being encouraged to make weak political movements like this, and it wouldn't help us. It would hurt us. It wouldn't be a good thing. It would be a bad thing. Very, very bad. Here's an interesting case: Quebec to shift to weekly COVID-19 infection reports. So I don't know if people just don't care about the dailies anymore. I haven't been watching the daily numbers for a while. But Ontario is still doing dailies. Everyone else is doing dailies. Quebec is being widely criticized for this, and they're lumping it in with the covering up of the long-term care home deaths and blah blah blah. So they want heads to roll with this, but if people aren't paying attention to it anymore, it's not news anymore, right? And I think that the news is the continued lockdowns, right? Here's an interesting juxtaposition. At the Upper Grand District School Board, you can say that systems built by white people are inherently racist, are inherently white supremacist, not just racist, inherently white supremacist and therefore racist. And nobody is upset about that. But if you say, as an Edmonton school trustee did, that refugee children didn't know school and knew violence, then you must step down. Isn't it interesting? So we'll play both, and you guys can make up your mind what you think about this. Here we go.
Because the systems were all developed by folks who were white, that they are inherently racist in that. And so what I think people get really confused when we talk about racism and often defensive is that they often look at racism based on an individual. So we're not talking here about individual acts of racism.
So I just wanted to call the attention to the white supremacy part. And here is, hold on, I'll cue one more up. Okay, I wanted to give the full context here. So here's the full context of this.
Heard of Dr. Ibram Kendi. He wrote a book that's based on critical race theory, and it's called How to Be an Anti-Racist. And in the book, he says that policies are never neutral, that nothing is neutral. It is either explicitly anti-racist or it's upholding white supremacy and therefore racist. So it's, I think folks get confused because they think that there's a middle ground of neutrality, and there's not. So that's
no middle ground of neutrality. Okay, now hear what the Edmonton school trustee says, and she has to step down.
Of refugee students that into our district that are from war-torn countries that have never known school before arriving here. All they've known is violence. When those students sometimes enter our schools, they can be violent there as well. And I feel that the safety of students is critically important, that other students feel safe as they go to their own schools. The officers act as a deterrent. They can respond quickly to de-escalate situations when needed. And I completely concur with you, Chair, that what kind of message is this sending about trusting our police force? I just really feel that it's not evidence-based, just as you've said, just as I've said, and I really encourage my colleagues to consider not voting for this motion, because again, in a court of law, you're innocent until proven guilty.
You're innocent until the woke Twitter mob shows up at your door, right? And then demands your resignation, demands it. So in Canada, to be clear, if you're defending the rule of law, which is innocent until proven guilty, which means the law applies to everyone equally, blah, blah, blah. If you are saying the SRO, the high school officers, the officers that have been in high schools for more than 10 years now, are helpful and not harmful. If you are saying It's not evidence-based. Moving them out of this role is not evidence-based, and we shouldn't be going through with this. If you say all those things, and you say that children who come from war-torn countries, from wherever, as refugees, may not have known anything but violence and then behave violently in the school, how dare you? How dare you resign? How dare you? How dare you? You know what? Honestly, I would have made them fire me. I wouldn't have resigned. I would have made them fire me. I would have said, prove me wrong. But that's just me. Because I'm just like that. You know, because if you're going to stand for something, stand for it, right? Don't back down now. You've said the truth and you're being crucified for it. Don't resign. Make them fire you. Make them eat their words. Make them show what jackals they are. Make them fire you. My goodness. But this one, right? This one's okay. Every system white people make is every system white people make is racist because it's made by white people. And if it's not anti-racist, it's upholding white supremacy. That's what this one says. So isn't that interesting? The juxtaposition there. You can't defend things and say this isn't based in evidence. This is insanity. Here's the last little bit. This made me howl. I just tweeted this with an LOL. This just made me laugh. 660 News in Calgary is reporting, Alberta opposition NDP says a proposed bill that calls for more referendums is an anti-democratic power grab by Premier Jason Kenney. And I mean, if you know what a referendum is, and here's the definition of a referendum: a general vote by the electorate on a single political question, which has been referred to them for a direct decision. Yeah, you anti-democracy power grabber. The world is upside down, right? And this is the kind of stuff they try and sell you, right? A referendum by the people, that anti-democratic, power-hungry monster, right? Anti-racist policies that are racist, right? How dare you say this is not based in science? How dare you say it's not evidence-based? How dare you defend the SRO officer? Didn't you get the mob's opinion? Everybody's screaming for officers' heads and they don't like police, and right? We should defund them and fund social workers, right? That's exactly the same thing, right? It's maddening. It's maddening. Upside down world, right? They will tell you whatever they want to tell you. This is your leadership. This is the people vying for leadership. This is the NDP party speaking. Right? They'll do whatever they think will get votes, and people will fall for it because, well, what does a referendum mean, right? How many people in your circle don't know? There are people who don't know, right? Thanks for watching, everybody. And check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and this came up when I wasn't expecting it, so I was going to say something about it, but forget about it. It's all good. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.